A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zamakumalo, aka the host with the most. And today we are going to be talking about AI marketing transformation from content to personalization. And as per usual, I do not go alone. Today, I have a very special guest who is going to introduce himself because he is an AI guru. He is a digital marketing expert, and it would be injustice of me to just basically summarize what he does. Before anything else, I'd just like for each and every one of us to just give a great warm round of applause to our very own Mr. Philip Kamungoma. Thank you so much for joining in, and I hope that we are going to have a splendid time. Philip, please do let the audience know as to who you are, what is it that you're all about, and again, welcome once again to the Asante MarTech series. We really are quite honored to have you on here.
It's a pleasure to be on with you, Zama. Greetings to all the viewers across. Yes, so I am Philip. Philip Cam is the short variation of it. I am a digital transformation and marketing and advertising specialist. I've been in the industry for over just over a decade and a half, dabbling in and across different parts of technology. And I think the interesting bit is I did kind of start my journey within the tech space. And I think we started to find that more and more, when you look at technology as a business tool, you start to tap into marketing. And, as digital transformation started to extend, and as, digital maturity and online touch points started to grow, started to now find that many different touch points and digital touch points have a direct attribution to business level journeys and problems. So I think the ability to bridge that gap between, the creative and bringing the technology has always been a very big passion of mine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's just get into, the show and everything of that nature. Just basically get into the ease of things. In your view, how is what does AI drive a transformation mean to you, or what does digital transformation mean to you in today's landscape, in the digital marketing era and things of that nature?
Definitely. I think, firstly, for a lot of the naysayers, AI feels a lot like a buzzword. It taps into things like NFTs, which was big a few years ago and has kind of faded away. But I think the beauty of where the industry is at currently is that AI and AI-driven marketing and transformation has kind of shifted the conversation a little bit. It's more shifted. It's shifted things from institutional and institution-based decision making to more intelligence driven marketing. It's not just about automating tasks. It's about finding that data, tapping into algorithms, identifying predictive insights to understand customers at scale, and more importantly the ability to anticipate their needs and when to serve them, when to speak to people when they have the most mental availability in real time. Historically, it's costed lots and lots of money, and it requires a lot of investment. And now, with the rise of technology, AI, and more available scales, we're finding that more and more smaller organizations, startups, can now be big disruptors at similar levels as bigger players within different industries, which makes it a very exciting landscape, especially here in South Africa and in the African context.
Thank you so much for that. So, speaking of marketing, digitalization and AI and everything of that nature, we see that there's quite a lot of competitive edge happening within brands, and we just see that brands are trying to always stay afloat and trying to stay, always on number one. Within that, why do you think that personalization has become such an important factor when it comes to brands at the end of it all?
Good question. So I find that traditionally marketing and advertising, especially in the brand space, has always worked in broad strokes. Segmenting by demographic or by interest. Now AI has kind of redefined that. Now we can kind of create dynamic audience models that evolve based on user behavior, sentiment, and contextual signals. So now you find that if you're launching campaigns or you're trying to speak to different users or different touch points, we are now able to optimally automate a lot of the performance elements and create different creative variations that can speak directly to different consumers. Essentially turning AI, and AI has pretty much turned marketing from a broad messaging to orchestrated experiences. It's enabled us to now have those personalized one-on-one chats with people.
Hmm. I want us to also just break your title a little bit. I actually love it, and it's a new thing. And we always motivate people within not only the tech space, but just within any type of industry you're in. Always know that something new is going to come up. So I love the title of digital transformation specialist. I really love that title, and I just want you to break it down for our viewers as to when you speak about digital transformation, what is it that you mean, and what type of strategies do you actually come up with for a brand to be non-winning component to a winning component?
That is an amazing question. And I think it's a question not everyone is always willing to ask. So
Mm,
when we discuss digital transformation in simple everyday terms, it means using technology to work faster, smarter, and more efficiently, right? So in the old way, to break it down, we'd have situations where we'd operate in, paper files and manual ways. But now with different touch points, it allows us to have so many different points of information that can advise business and day-to-day business decisions that actually drive business outcome. So from a digital transformation and as a digital transformation specialist, we kind of bridge the gap between the C-suites and the big decision makers and the operational teams, identifying all the necessary elements in and around the organization, bringing in the most important data sets, identifying the data elements, the data that we have available and that we can curate for your organization, tying in, more importantly, I think how your organization works, makes decisions, and starting to enrich that with not only just with data, but I think more importantly also, I think the part that most people miss when it comes to any digital transformation or organizational transformation is the people, right? How are we bringing the people you have in your organization? How are we reskilling them to ensure that you're future-proofing your space and ensuring that you've got the right level skills while also providing an enriching and a fulfilling place that high performers in your industry will want to come and operate in. So the ability to kind of bridge, how you can start to take your business to the next level with the new touch points we have in the fourth industrial revolution. So mostly we tend to consult a lot in the advertising and marketing space, but also similar to how you guys operate, in terms of the enterprise resource planning, identifying roadmaps for digital maturity and tapping into different industries, all the way from technology, marketing, advertising, all the way to assisting states and how they're doing their state planning, and bringing in digital touch points to improve things such as healthcare and accessibility to education by leveraging different touch points. So it's a very all-encompassing approach to how we transform businesses. So in layman's terms, I like to view us as the special force unit that you have in the corner, when you need to figure out what's happening in the far end.
yeah. So within that, how do you ensure that brands, as a strategy, I'm sure that you use, how do you ensure that probably within the AI tools that you use, you ensure that the brand's voice is still kept authentic to its target audience? Because I know that's a very, very hard thing to do, especially because people will be sort of using the same type of, AI tool or same type of strategy, but ensuring that the voice is still kept authentic to their audience. It's quite a hard task. So how do you actually overcome that, or how do you do that?
Great question. So I think that definitely speaks into how you bring in AI and AI tools at an organizational level.
Mm,
The ability and the beauty of AI right now is it allows us to shorten a lot of the thought processes, to organize different thoughts, to bring together different, ideas. But more importantly, and what that brings is it's taken away the grunt work of, the human element. But
mm,
within that space, there's still a very important part that us as humans have to bring, which is the human ingenuity and creativity. And that's what kind of bridges the gap between just utilizing AI to give you a very generic view of how we can roll something out, how we can roll our brands out, how we can position XYZ, versus allowing it to segment all your different data points, and you as the human bring in that human ingenuity to ensure that the brand purpose still has a human voice and still remains authentic. So the ability, I'm sure you've seen, for example, if we look at ChatGPT, if you
Yes.
tell ChatGPT draw me a picture of a tree, it'll draw you something very generic. But if you tell it, listen, I need you to draw me an apple tree that's
Mm,
looking, in the autumn. It's a bit shady. I've got XYZ, six numbers of apples, and there's a couple of fledglings. It's willing to go into that detail, but it's now about how we as organizations and organizational leaders train our staff, our teams to be
mm.
able to use these tools effectively as a complementary tool and not as a replacement for the big work.
Yes, yes. So, thank you so much for that. In your opinion, which brands are successfully doing amazing work in what you just mentioned now with keeping the authentic voice? And you can obviously spot in, because I mean, at the end of the day, you are specialists. You can spot that, AI tools have been utilized here. So, which brand, in your opinion, actually does a fantastic job or an amazing job at obviously showcasing that.
Definitely. So I think what I'll do is, just to avoid any sort of bias, I'm gonna tap into a global brand
No
and maybe a
problem.
brand that I'm also not tapping into and I don't consult for personally. So I would definitely say, I think a great example, and a brand that assisted and pioneered in how we catch into AI, I think would definitely be Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola used generative AI art as well as copy to launch what's called its create real magic. So if you go into Google search create real magic campaign, it was going to provide you a great view into this approach, but it pretty much let users co-create ads with the brand. So as you
Mm,
know, in this day and age, we are advertised to everywhere. You look at it on TV,
mm,
on your phone, and
mm.
ad avoidance is getting an all-time high. People
Yeah.
don't want to turn off. And it's not that people don't like ads, but people don't like unnecessary and irrelevant ads.
They don't
If
like
there's
noise, basically. They don't like too much noise.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So now it's about how to bridge the gap between finding that moment of mental availability. If I'm trying to get you to sign up to Netflix, for example, I'm not really going to speak to you during the work hours. You don't really care about it during that. But when you're sitting at home or on a weekend when you're browsing, your mental availability may be a bit higher. And platforms and different online platforms have different data sets that we can tap into to provide and identify all these different insights. So
Mm,
for a lot of brands, I think the ability to tap into the AI elements while kind of bringing it to life is going to be essential. And then I think, just as a bit of a music lover, I think one cool call out that I also have is Spotify's Wrapped, where they kind of give you a breakdown of your favorite songs for the year, your big breakdown.
yes. The fame.
That definitely, I'm
I'm
sure
just,
it's
I'm
supposed
just,
to
I'm
be that.
just, I'm in agreement with you. I'm sorry to cut you short. I'm so in agreement with you because also it makes you, and you know what, you actually brought up such a valid point. Actually having that human emotion to it as well, and Spotify has done such an amazing job with that because it shows you that throughout the year, what your musical taste has gone. So you can be a person maybe listening to Maskandi, to gospel,
Mhm.
to pop, to R&B, but it just shows you a different variation. It's like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that I actually listened to the song. Let me just, go into it again. So that is a beautiful way of, translating what you just mentioned. And I really, I really, really, resonate with what you're just mentioning as well. So I know that you said you don't want to be a bit biased, but I'll give you the opportunity to be a bit biased, just with one brand that you just feel that okay, they're doing an amazing job.
Well, so if you do want to kind of go and see like work that's currently out in market right now, if you go and look at Toyota South Africa and you search for their Starlet campaign, they've
Mm,
tapped very nicely into different AIs and identifying different variations of fun and versions of and what fun means to different people. Right now, the
mm,
way I define fun and how you define fun are completely different. What they did was they tapped very much into different archetypes, different ways in which people have fun online, and leveraged AI as well as that human element to create custom creative that speak to different people. So if you're a fitness enthusiast, for example, you're going to see that specific vehicle and something related to fitness, or you going to the gym, or if you're a foodie, something, a cool little text copy that calls out and taps into that. And what they've found is that that campaign and the ability to just add that human element and that personalization into me knowing that Zama is interested in Maskandi music, and the creative has a reference to something that you love, means showed that people are now actually starting to click through more to that kind of campaign, and they're seeing very good traction on that in a
Mm,
campaign that's not really sharing anything completely new, but is
mm,
speaking to people more in a personalized mode. So anything else, I'd say, authenticity is a non-negotiable.
yeah.
AI is definitely, is a co-creator, not a replacement for that human. But when you bring it together and you
Mm.
speak to that human truth of your audience, then that's where you get the magic.
And I also feel, just adding on to what you're saying, I also feel that this is how your storytelling actually happens as well. Because brands tend to think that, oh, if Philip is doing this, then we need to do the same thing. But you don't realize that you're losing out on the core essence of what your company is all about, you know? So storytelling is another major component in which other brands are able, as the ones that you just mentioned, are able to actually just progress and be really, really good at what they need to do. So the time right now is 18:46. My name is Zama Kumalo, aka host with the most. I'm here with our very special guest, our digital transformation specialist, Mr. Philip Kamungoma. I really, really do appreciate the fact that you came over here, because you could have been anywhere else, but you are here with us. So we really do appreciate it at the Asante MarTech webinar series. And if you, as the audience, would love to say any questions, if there's anything that you want to leave behind or any comment that you want to say, please do not be shy into doing that. Please do remember that our hashtag is Asante MarTech. So, Philip, back to our conversation. We just obviously had an opening and engaging one, and we've just spoken about content and strategy. So I just also want to find out from you, as to from other brands, what strategies they use. But when it comes to AI transformation, especially because you're a digital transformation specialist, what are some of the strategies? You don't have to share all of them, but those that are probably budding or aspiring digital transformation specialists, what are some of the strategies that you use for brands or content that can basically take a brand from 0 to 100?
Perfect. So when it comes to AI, I think everyone's always looking for the big flashy thing. But I always like to ask brands to kind of nudge it back, and let's get back to right down back to the basics, right? So understanding first and foremost, if we get the basics right, that's when you can make magic. So the ability first and foremost to get, AI readiness and having AI readiness assessment amongst your teams. First and foremost, ensuring that, you can start to train your teams up, ensuring that they have the right level infrastructure, but more importantly starting to tap into things such as process automation. I think AI, if the beauty about learning models is, once you actually create the right level parameters for the algorithm and you let it know, listen, this is the floor, this is the wall, this is where you can play, and this is what it means to our brand, and you input that, of course, in a very data safe way, it'll enable you to start to actually automate a lot of repetitive business tasks, so such as handling documentation, creating post copy in your post copy strategies in terms of creating the base work, and more importantly, also the ability to start to drive, cross functional AI teams, blending teams between your data teams with your domain experts, and using AI and tech to actually start to merge these and bring these together. Now, if you're a small business and you're starting to ask, how can I start to use AI to improve my offering and my placement? I think the first space for it is in your research. Historically, organizations would have to spend tons and tons of money to attain data and to attain different data points. And you find that the bigger marketing, blue chip marketing consultancies, your Accentures, your McKinseys, actually release a lot of white papers and a lot of data related to a lot of different industries that we speak into. Now, people wouldn't necessarily have enough time to go through and peruse through all those papers. But if you, as somebody who's, for example, within the tech space, or if you're in logistics, for example, you could pull those and have as by simply inputting it into one of these AI tools, have it discern and identify key insights that speak to you. So using it to actually start to take away the grunt work of your research, of your process rotations, are going to be the key small steps that set the perfect foundation to you starting to improve your tech stack, and more importantly, start to use technology to help you drive business objectives.
I love that phrase that you just mentioned, where you speak about how technology drives business objectives. So, just going onto the topic of data and personalizations, how is it that AI is assisting marketers to go from segmentation to one-on-one personalization?
Right. So segmentation groups and users are very similar, right? So AI personalization kind of treats every user as a segment of one. And I think that's the beauty of it, kind of leaning into that heavy grunt work, right? By analyzing behaviors, context, and emotional data, AI dynamically can tailor messages, creative, and as well as timing for each individual. So for example, if we're trying to reach Zama in a puppy compliant way, we're not necessarily going to identify, go into your personally identifiable data, but we've got the IMEI number of your mobile device, for example. We don't know who you are, but we know the behaviors on your mobile device. We know you browse on TikTok on X time. This is when you're reading the news. This is when you're speaking to. This is when you're using different touch points. And AI kind of will enable us to kind of do that heavy grunt work in identifying and driving hyper relevant marketing, that feels intuitive rather than intrusive, because it will help us identify when it's the best time to speak to someone. Is she busy and she's just looking at her phone to check on a message or an update from the family, or is there mental availability? AI and data will enable us to actually find those moments, just so that the ads, how we reach people, and the touch points that we use have more impact.
You actually spoke on something that I actually wanted to follow up on, which was protecting the consumer. And how is it that marketers can actually protect the consumer and ensuring that they're not infringing on their rights? I love that example that you just spoke about right now. So maybe let's just unpack that a little bit as to how is it that we as marketers do not infringe on the rights of our consumers and ensure that we actually do protect their rights and ensure that the content that we deliver actually doesn't infringe on their rights at the end of the day.
Perfect. That's actually a great question. So, as you know, the beauty about our beautiful South Africa is that we have some of the best legislations in the world. And our Poppy Act, our Poppy Act is one of those great legislations that ensure that, we're the personal and restrictive data of our consumers themselves is very much protected. So first and foremost, for us as advertisers, in simple terms, I always like to give what I call the top three and the baby three when it comes to marketing data and compliance, right? First and foremost, we have to get clear, right? Informed consent is the term of the day. So, collecting emails, phone numbers, location data, you have to ensure that we're collecting it and we're communicating in a very transparent way to consumers why we're collecting that data, what it's going to be used for, where we're going to be storing that data, but more importantly, how we're going to start to use that first party data, right? We tend to find a lot of companies leverage CRMs, web systems, or maybe just demand side placements and CRM data from like Meta or your Google in the advertising space. Although it does provide anonymized, unencrypted data, you find that if in the way that you're advertising to a lot of individuals, you have to then start to go into your campaigns and deep dive and see where the effectiveness is. Reduce simple things such as reducing a frequency cap in serving ads will ensure that I can reach Zama and let her know about this great product 3 times before hitting 5 to 15 times and starting to annoy the life out of her to a point where when she sees the brand, she just kind of cringes. So we always have to find that great mix between identifying mental availability and top points of mental availability, but also not starting to create negative sentiments to yourself as a brand. And that's kind of where a lot of brands who don't necessarily take the data and data compliance into consideration tend to be. I'm sure you would have seen, if you recall, when Temu launched in South Africa, you could
Yeah.
not go anywhere without seeing a Temu ad, which was
The
great.
spinning wheel as well. Remember that?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
No,
So
yeah. No, carry on. Sorry, sorry.
no, no, go for it, go for it.
You know, what I was gonna just no, I was actually just really, really loving what you're saying because that actually is sort of like a challenge as well. Speaking on to one of the challenges that organizations or companies face, brands actually rather face when it comes to integrating AI into their marketing systems. And it goes back to the original point that I'd mentioned, where there's a lot of noise because, like you mentioned now, that's
Yeah.
just an example of it that you're seeing the spinning wheel all the time and you're just like, oh my goodness, this is a bit too much. What other challenges are organizations facing, excuse me, or rather brands facing when they are integrating AI into their marketing systems?
Great. I think in terms of the bigger challenges, I think it's also about identifying what the role of AI and what it's trying to solve. I think a lot of organizations tend to go into not only just AI but also technological, installations, be it in bringing in ERP, bringing in a new CRM system,
Mm,
without actually clearly defining what role this new tech is actually going to play within
yeah.
the business. Take the ability to take away that ambiguity and actually say, you know what, we're bringing this in to be a predictive role. We're going to use it to build a digital twin environment, for example, to reduce our research and development, so that we can actually use AI to actually take what we have in our factory, for example, and create a virtual twin of that, so that we can actually test out different variations without us having to go and actually physically buy all that equipment. But we can use the data from our own factory to make it as real as possible, because we've got real-time data points that will help the simulation speak to everything a bit better. And that's just an example, even just from a technological and from a tech implementation perspective. When we bring it all the way back down to advertising, are you looking for AI to now replace your copywriter and your graphic designer?
Mm,
If you're looking to stay authentic, you probably still need those individuals so that you can have a sense of truth. And that's kind of where we as individuals within organizations kind of have to play. We're not the people. We're not the people, rolling the wheel anymore. We're
mm,
now in the driver's seat. And AI is the engine driving the vehicle. It's about us, how we steer, how we ensure that we're taking on our brakes with our checks and balances to move fast enough, agile enough, but also ensure that we don't come to collision and that we're trying to reach a set objective and not going around the circle.
mm. So, the thing is also, Philip, is how is it that small businesses, and thank you so much for that contribution, how is it that small businesses can, benefit from AI tools without actually breaking the budget? Because that is a major, major, major thing. And we're seeing a lot of small businesses coming up and about. But how is it that they can ensure that they can integrate AI and don't actually just break the budget?
Right. So that's actually a very important point, and I think I do love to always chat and jump into that one quite a bit. So what I always find when we talk about this is that AI has been democratized, right? So you've got tools like your Chat GPT, your Jasper, your Canva AI, HubSpot, predictive advertising, which are affordable and scalable. But similarly, I think the great part is that we're also experiencing one of the greatest AI tech races of the future. It kind of feels like that challenge of when the countries were fighting to see who could get to the moon first. And we're starting to see, although Silicon Valley has the Chat GPTs and the bigger ones from the Eastern Bloc, you're now starting to see the rise of free related tools such as your DeepSeek, your Kimi AI, which are providing the free models of what you'd pay for in the ChatGPT environment. So when it comes to smaller business, I always say it's always about how identify what's in the market, what tools are you looking for, what models are there. The great part about the competition right now is that everybody is trying to identify the greatest users. So
Mm.
for smaller businesses, it's an advantage for us to kind of tap into it. So for smaller brands, my advice is always, start small. Automate repetitive tasks, use AI for creative testing, and emphasis on the testing part. Starting
Yes,
to leverage predictive evidence and insights.
I love that. I love that advice. It's solid. It's something also that quite a lot of companies need because the problem that with small businesses is that yes, there's Chat GPT, but there's other variations. I'm just making an example. Other
Yeah.
variations of other AI tools that you can use as well. The other day I was actually using Gemini AI and looking onto how was it that I can incorporate like a corporate suit with a picture of mine, and it came out so beautifully. And for some people, that's a good thing because they can save up on cost, but the picture can look as realistic as ever. So it also advocates to what you're saying with regards to making sure that you test out all the tools that are available as well.
100%.
So
And you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to
yeah,
democratization. Because
yes,
think about it, if you're a small brand in KZN, and now you've
yes,
got AI tools, AI can now enable you to actually create a virtual showroom for your clothes. Put your clothes on a
mm,
platform, literally create a link to a set targeted GPT where a user can upload their face and it'll actually put them and create an AR variation of them wearing your clothes. That
yeah.
provides a game changer and a touch point that's personalized for you for that you can kind of tap into. So there's so many ways and use cases where we could tap into this tech.
I actually want to unpack that as well because the other day I was watching a advert, and they were actually, I think it was a store that sells weaves, and they had like a showroom, like what you're saying, where you can actually see the different types of weaves or wigs that would be best suited for you. So I said, we're ahead of the curve now, and now we are actually seeing as to what suits us. I forgot which brand it was, but it also speaks onto what you're saying, that there was a showroom happening whereby you could just tell that if let's say that Philip wants to wear suits, I'm just making an example, like a yellow suit, and see will it actually match with him. They have a showroom for that, and then if Philip is feeling like very summerish, they have a showroom for that. So we really are going ahead of the curve, and it really does speak to what you're saying right now to see as to what is out there and what is it that people don't like, what is it that people don't like, so that we can personalize the taste that is out there. So yeah, definitely giving props to what you're saying. So ladies and gentlemen, the time right now is 19:03. My name is Amakumalo, aka the host with the most. If you've just joined us, please, we are more than welcoming into having you here. And I'm here with my guest because you know that I never go alone. My amazing digital transformation specialist, Mr. Philip Kamungoma. We are busy speaking about AI transformation, and we're speaking about AI content and personalization. And it is so important that you need to personalize yourself in this day and age and use the tools that are available to you in order for you to just make sure that you're ahead of the curve. So, Philip, we've spoken quite a lot about content creation. We're talking about data and personalization, and now we're just speaking about, practical implementation. So, within, the whole AI marketing ecosystem, what skills, in your view, and probably give me four, do you feel are quite essential for you to be ahead of the curve? So let's just go along with your type of career. That what are the top four skills that are essential in order for you to be ahead of the curve?
I love that question. I think it's actually very important. So currently, to be kind of AI driven in this kind of space, I think for marketers are now part-time storytellers, part-time data scientists. So having the ability to kind of have skills in prompt engineering, ability to use your AI tools and actively communicate the right parameters of what you want, because in the AI space, ambiguity is kind of what kills everything. So your
True.
ability to prompt, data interpretation, and your ability, I think, to just organize it enough so that you can identify and ascertain the right level insights. But then also more importantly, I would also say your ability to start to tap into it in organizing your top level thoughts when you're going into a project. You can go into a piece of paper, provide a big data dump, and say, listen, this is my touch point, this is my problem, this is who I'm speaking to, this is the market context. And you can use tech tools and AI with the right level prompt engineering to also to almost use that to create the baseline foundation so that you don't have to spend 3 or 4 hours organizing your thoughts. You can use the technology to provide that. So I think now it's now about knowing, how to lean into automation and then when to lead with that human insight. I think is going to be the essential tool as we move forward.
Excuse me. I love the point of prompt engineering. The other day I actually was on Google and I didn't realize that was an actual course, that how to be proficient in prompt engineering within the AI space. And I was so taken aback because I was like, wow, we really have gone quite far in the technological space as well, because it's essential that whatever you're prompting out, you need to be as specific as possible in order for you to get the desired results. So within also the AI, transformation and content and personalization. Obviously, we did touch a bit on the challenges. What is your feel on the policies that are out there? Do you feel that we need more policies to enforce, stricter regulations, or you feel that right now we're still trying to learn all about AI, and it's only then when we can actually see as to what type of regulations do we actually need?
So that's actually a very important question. So I'd like to break my answer up into twofold, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so when we talk about regulation, first and foremost, I'd like to talk about at a country level. So at a country level, I think we've got a very good baseline in terms of regulation and how we utilize technology. However, I think as this tech starts to evolve, we have to, and our regulators have to ensure that we have the regulation that we have encompasses all the necessary realms that we currently operate in. And when you talk about like technology and ambiguity in regulation, one example I'll give to you is the gambling industry within South Africa, which is over a 30 trillion rand industry, but most of it is now being driven by online gambling. But most
Mm,
of these people are sitting and their proxy companies are outside of South Africa, which means that our gambling regulators can't necessarily reach them, but they can reach you on your mobile phone. So how exactly our
mm,
regulators are evolving in real time to deal with the real time regulation to ensure that we can protect our consumers is going to be essential. Then
mm,
the secondary fold is definitely in how these models themselves are being trained. Remember, learning management systems are based on data. Now, unfortunately, there's no real regulation into the type of data sets you can kind of ingest into these LMMs. It's pretty much at the disclosure of the developers themselves. But our ability to ensure that as we start to use more predictive systems, even in day-to-day society, as we're seeing, for example, in the UK, where they've got street cameras, identifying user behavior and suspicious behavior, ensuring that the data itself also doesn't have bias to certain groups and is not actually going to discriminate against certain groups of people, be it on religion, race, or any form of beliefs, or any other ways in which you could segment sort of individuals. So the ability to ensure that we as a global in the tech space can have regulation into what you can and can't ingest into the learning systems are going to be essential to ensuring that these tools remain a part and an accessory to us, and not go into the techophobes view of the Terminator world, driven by a giant AI that's out to get humanity. So the ability to drive that regulation internationally is going to be essential to how the industry is going to look in the next couple of years.
awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I'm just going to read one message over here that comes from Mutlan Dwalane. He says here, Demo had the greatest market launch in it's still solid. And that's really correct because as you mentioned that, as much as we were talking about the noise, the aggressive marketing actually ha- it had weight. It held some
Yes.
weight to it at the end of it. Also, definitely in agreement to that. So, Philip, tell me. I know that you spoke about a couple of years, and I love that. Where do you see the industry in 3 to 5 years, in your view?
So I think we're moving towards what I call predictive intimacy, right? Where AI, starts to anticipate human emotions and context in real time. Where personalization is kind of going to evolve from static recommendations to adaptive experiences and kind of shifting the tone of voice, in the way you speak, in the way I speak to you in an ad or a video ad speaks to you, the facial expressions, or even the environmental cues in the background and in the creative itself. So I believe the future is very like responsive, empathetic, and is seamlessly going to be embedded. AI is definitely going to be embedded in almost every facet of day-to-day lives. So it's definitely something that we would have to embrace, but more importantly, we have to, as a society, guide the development to ensure that it is something that's going to be continue to be complementary to how to us as a society.
I like the word complementary because that's really true in the society, not only that we live in, but also the industry that we are all in. And do you ever feel that, rather not feel, but do you see that, do you view that AI will replace human creativity, or it's a thing that AI would rather enhance it, rather?
So I think creativity will remain human, right? AI definitely enhances it, it amplifies it, and it will help kind of accelerate it. But empathy can't be automated,
Mm,
cultural nuances, in the way I speak to somebody. If I speak to a Zulu from KZN versus a Zulu from Joburg, the subtle cues in how we communicate and
mm,
speaking to that, AI, unfortunately, you can't automate that. So
yeah,
creativity will always remain a human element. Now it's just about how we kind of drive that, transparency and accountability. And I think transparency and accountability are pretty much going to be the trust currencies of the future. How much do we trust these models, and how much are we actually leveraging them to actually speak to individuals? Because as you're saying, even if we go back to like the Temu launch, what worked very well for them is, once again, as I said before, an effective campaign has got great reach, because the
mm,
more people you reach, the more eyeballs, the more consideration, which means the more sales. But more importantly, they were speaking to you all the time. So even though half the time you were like, okay, it's irrelevant, but in your moment of mental availability, when you're actually sitting and you're actually consuming information, they were also there, which what caused salience and you built brand revenue and real estate in our minds. And I think it's always about now, how do we actually start to bring and bridge the old way of how we do things, as well as the new technologies, to find, a way in which, and a future in which brands kind of blend, human ingenuity and machine precision.
I love that. Everything you have spoken today is just facts upon facts. It's funny because you sort of answering, and it's like you're just gelling into the next part of the conversation, and you spoke on such a very, very, very important word, which is transparency, and that's ensuring, as to organizations and us as consumers, there is some level of transparency. In your view, how is it that we can create more transparency between the two and ensure that there's no level of mistrust happening? Because unfortunately, we find that a lot of brands tend to abuse the trust that is out there between them and the consumer. So how do we ensure that we merge the two and ensure that there is transparency at the end of the day?
I think that's definitely going to be driven by one word, right? Accountability, and
Yes.
our ability to design with accountability, which means, are we clearly communicating about how AI is used in our day to day, ensuring that, bias are audited. We audit all the bias and all the technology that we use. So we're not isolating, any individuals, and more importantly, you have to involve humans in key decision loops. Trust
Mm.
is earned, and it's earned through openness. So consumers understand, we have to understand, how the consumer feels and why they feel that way, and the how and the why behind AI-driven experiences will kind of engage how you can drive confidence with individuals, because as you're saying right now, it's a space where, as brands, it's more important to maintain your brand trust and archetype, because it costs almost 7 times more to start trying to rebuild trust, because as you're saying, you kind of only get one first impression. and you have to get that right. Changing
Mm.
that becomes an uphill battle. So you always have to lead with accountability and design with accountability in mind.
Oh, Philip, this conversation has been nothing but enlightening. This conversation has been nothing but great. And I'm just going to carry on with this conversation because really we're talking about personalization. So now, I think besides brands and someone like an influencer, for instance, I want to just pick your brain a little bit. In your view, who, or in your opinion rather, maybe who, any type of influencer in any field, who is doing it correctly when it comes to personalization in your view, and they're actually ticking all the boxes, and also provide a reason why they're ticking the boxes as well, because as we mentioned before, that when it comes to this day and age, there's so much noise going on that it's sometimes hard to see as to who is actually gauging our attention at the end of it all.
Great, and I think that's a great one, right? And I
Mm.
think especially in the influence space now, we are in an environment where a lot a lot of individuals have or trust in brands or traditional advertising has kind of dwindled a lot, right? And
Yeah.
that's where taking in other people's experiences and advocacy of influencers kind of taps into that and taps into the human element. So people look for human to human advocacy, and
Yeah.
because now, in the internet and online social touch points are those spaces that drive it for us, influencers have kind of become those individuals who
Yeah.
drive that, right? But now, influencers, when we talk about the people who are doing it right and doing it great,
Yeah.
their ability to start to, tap into, key cool backgrounds and generating, cool scenarios, and using AI image tools such as Runway and Midjourney, the ones that kind of use those to create cool sort of creatives and personalized elements. But then if we talk about guys who do it quite well, I would say there's been if you recall, there was I think Kabila May. So
Okay.
he was the influencer who went viral on TikTok during COVID, kind of mimicking Mr. Bean. He kind of just reacts with the expressions.
Oh yes, the guy that does this the whole time.
Yeah,
Yes.
that guy. He kind of taps very
Yes.
much into a lot of these different spaces. So their ability to kind of use tailor-made AI tools to kind of drive. My apologies, right? Tailor-made
Yes.
AI tools. Sorry, they always come and run into the office. I think they're like, okay, it's time for you to come play with us now. But I think that people kind of use personalized messages. I think another great one would be a UK-based influencer. I'd call it Nadine Begay. So she provided very personalized skincare recommendations based on your own feed. So, for example, she'll actually create 10 different videos talking about different ingredients. And she sets her algorithm to say if you've been searching for natural ingredients and natural remedies, she's only her videos on those type of content is going to be served to you, and she's managed to build a very strong base because of that. So I think it's all about tapping into the emerging trends. I think a cool new thing that's been coming up now is kind of AI clones. You can kind of have AI kind of scan around and create an AI variation of you, and you can have dialogue with the self. But also, more importantly, I think localization, and AI influencers
Yes.
actually using AI to actually localize their content to speak to people in the right environments, right language, within their right regional dialects. Those are going to be the game changers that are really going to shift the gears for the creator-led space.
I love the fact that you spoke about localization because, unfortunately, or fortunately, rather, we live in the global village, and now people tend to put everything into one, and that's where sometimes messages get lost. What's happening in the UK can be a bit different into what's going on in South Africa. So I really love the fact that you brought on localization. I think a brand for me. It, well, she's sort of like an individual. It was the founder of Beauty on Tap. I love how
Okay.
she's been able to localize her brand. I remember there was this one AI that she used, one AI function that she used, whereby she was just basically launching one of her products, and it was like it localized it in the sense that Durban, we're coming to you, so they were using isiZulu, and we're able to just connect with the audience as well. Because unfortunately, we always have a case whereby it will be Cape Town or Johannesburg, and Durban sometimes gets lost. But it was nice to have Durban into the mix as well,
Mm,
and hear even the language as well. And that is such a strong
yeah.
point that sometimes a lot of brands tend to miss out on, that use the localization, because that's where you're also able to garner in potential audiences within what you're doing, and you're able to make sure that you kept your message at the end of it all. So, I mean, I really love the conversation that you and I are having. What is the key word that you would use for when it comes to personalization, that if anyone had to be like, Philip, what's a nice way to summarize personalization that everyone should use in the everyday way of living, and ensuring that they want a new audience, ensuring that even they capturing the same audience that they have. What is a key word that people should use in whatever that they're doing?
So I think when it comes to that's actually a tricky one, right? But if I
Yeah,
could use one word that was like all encompassing, right? I would say
yeah.
it's all about tailoring, right? AI
Us.
personalization and AI tools, it's all about, kind of capturing the essence, adapting content experiences and interactions to each and every individual using
Yeah.
AI insights and the ability to kind of tailor that to these individuals. How we customizing, emphasizing, the right choice and fit for individuals, ensuring
Mm,
that, we speak to more formal kind of spaces. And I think just going back to your point that you raised earlier, speaking to individuals in local languages, especially for like global,
mhm,
is also one of the bigger game changers. I was reading a study a few weeks ago, actually, that was actually stating that within the South African environment, right, 90% of South Africans prefer to be marketed to in their local languages, and especially
definitely.
because people find that they engage much stronger. And when we looked and deep dived into that, we actually saw that actually drives the results for them, right? So we actually did a couple of case studies a year or two ago, and we actually found that actually conversion rates, if you advertise or speak to individuals in their native tongue, they
Mm,
have 13% more likelihood to interact with your brand, and there is a 30% uplift in trust simply because I spoke to you in your local language, in a way that makes you feel comfortable and you can understand. So the ability to start to localize, and for global brands as well as small brands to speak to individuals and speak to individuals' identities, and tailoring, going back to the word,
yes.
tailoring those back to ensure that we can actually speak to individuals in a personalized way and in a relevant way is going to be the essential bit. And that's what's going to differentiate people with good AI implementation versus people who just look like they copy and pasted what they saw, on the prompt.
I love that word identity. I think also that is a beautiful way of summarizing anything. What is your identity? How are you appealing to your audience? And that's where tailoring comes in. I know that you said it was a bit tricky, but you've encapsulated it quite well. So, we've spoken about content, we've spoken about data and personalization, we've spoken about the practical implementation onto how is it that you can utilize the tools that are available, or you can utilize any type of methods that are out there, and ensure that your brand is obviously seen in the best light. But also within the AI space, how is it that you can try and put your best foot forward? I see that Motle has a question here. He says, Philip, what challenges typically arise when trying to integrate legacy operations into a digital first model?
That is a very good question, right? So and I think it's one of the bigger challenges that most organizations kind of face, and especially when you're looking at not only just implementing new models, but also new technology. We tend to find that within the African context, at least 35% of new technology or new integrations fail. And this is very much driven by a lot of different touch points, right? Firstly, I would say technical challenges. So, outdated infrastructure and legacy systems may not necessarily have the ability to API or connect the data or migrate that data, in real time. So, ability to kind of drive that a good flow in between there, but also data silos. So, we find that a lot of legacy spaces and organizations kind of work in very isolated spaces, So old systems often kind of store data in isolated spaces, so it makes it very fragmented, and also the ability to kind of drive that level integration. Now, when we start to look at mitigation strategies, I think you definitely have to start out with a full audit, identifying the legacy dependencies. So identify how much data do you have, how fragmented is it, what steps do we need to take to be able to bring this together, and then more importantly, how to implement a very phased migration. I think everyone always tends to jump into this organization because when we talk new tech, new AI, new innovation, or even any new program, everyone wants the big shiny thing right at the end, but no, everyone's not really ready to kind of take the necessary steps. So taking a phased migration, starting with the non-critical systems, and piloting smaller projects so that you can actually start to roll it out. And also your ability to tap into midware, and more importantly, and this is what I always say is always the key of every digital transformation, your change management, your training, communication, and your ability to actually drive culture, showcase the cultural relevance and importance of that within your current organizational culture, so that the people inside are actually the advocates of your new technology, because it's usually the people in the organization that may not use the tech in the right way or don't find the importance of it.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Moshe, for that question as well. So, as I was saying before, we answered Moshe's question that we really have gone quite in depth of digital transformation. We've spoken basically about content and what is entailed within content and personalizing that content and the AI driven data as well that's out there. And how is it that brands can try and integrate the AI systems and also ensure that they are going into compliance with what is needed and ensuring that they don't infringe onto the rights of their consumers, but also speaking about what is it that is going for the future as well, and how we can localize our content, and ensuring that everyone understands the message and ensures that whatever data is put out there, each and everyone gets a share of the prize. Each and every person understands the data that's out there, and also, like I said before, that we don't infringe, because that's the most important thing. That you can have all the data in the world, but if you infringe on the rights of others, it really doesn't make sense and it won't work for you at the end of it. Also, Philip, thank you so much for your time. Before we head on out, what is your message of support to those maybe that want to be a digital transformation specialist, and also what is it that brands can do to maybe better themselves in whatever industry they are there in?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I would say for anyone looking to go into the field, or is interested in technology or digital transformation, I would say the time is now. In By 2040, we're going to have at least 60% of the world's working population right here in Africa, which means we're in a unique environment where we have to build the right necessary systems to be able to support this large and growing infrastructure and this global demand, because Africa is going to become a much bigger player within the global space as the world starts to evolve. Not only just moving away from a primary consumer and producer of primary goods, but now I think the bigger opportunity is that Africans in general are digital natives, because we had a gap between not being able to get all the Macintosh technology, but then we find that the best digital and mobile penetration in the world is actually found on the African continent. So your ability to start to tap into all the different nuances and ensure that we start to build solutions that are designed to deal with African solutions and African problems and the African business mindset, right? I think if there's one takeaway, or one key call out, I would say, or framework for small businesses when we're looking at AI, I would call it my ABC baseline, patent pending. But I always say, from an A perspective, we have to assess and strategize, right? So identify what your business goal is, ensure that you can audit your existing data, your tools, identify where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then prioritize quick wins. Don't look at the bigger picture and say, want to automate all these. Start where you are, start at home. Focus on low cost, high impact implementations first. Simple things, chatbots, email automation, personalization, and how you send out your mailers is going to kind of help. From a B perspective, now we have to focus now on building and integrating. choose the right tools and the tools that provide the right solutions for you. It's not a one size fits all. And you have to start very small and modularly and find how you can automate all your repetitive tasks, especially for a small business. AI is democratizing. You don't fully need a full workforce. You can all your repetitive tasks you can help to automate and take away those time consuming elements. And more importantly, the C comes back down to our ability to check, learn, and scale, which is very important. Our ability to track key KPIs and have KPIs when we go out and be more very, very decisive and definite about what we want to achieve. But more importantly, we have to be able to iterate and optimize, right? Review your results, tweak your workflow. You don't have to throw everything out, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Tweak it, start to A/B test, find approaches that work for you, your business, and your objective, and you find that you start to scale very well. So start with clear goals, and then use and start to scale from there to find solutions that speak to you.
Thank you so, so much, Philip. And thank you to everyone for joining us. This has been another jam packed session. I've truly enjoyed spending time with you, and I hope that you enjoyed the session. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, till the next one, my name is Zamakumala, the host with the most, and we are so, so grateful to have you here with us at the Asante MarTech series. Till the next time, it's good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.